The scent of roasted lamb and rosemary, usually a source of comfort, felt cloying in my throat. It was Sunday, the sacred day of the week when my husband Liam and I were expected at his parents' house for dinner. It was a ritual I dreaded with a visceral intensity, a 2-hour performance where I was always the understudy, never the star. Helen, my mother-in-law, presided over her dining room like a queen surveying her domain. The room was a shrine to a particular kind of aspirational wealth, gleaming mahogany furniture, a crystal chandelier that threw prisms of light onto the starched white tablecloth, and an array of silver cutlery that I was never quite sure how to use. I, Maya, sat in my usual spot, feeling as though a spotlight of judgment was shining directly on me. My clothes, though clean and presentable, felt drab against the backdrop of Helen's silk blouses and designer jewelry. My handbag, a practical leather tote from a high-street store, seemed to mock me every time I placed it on the floor next to her vintage Chanel. Tonight's topic of conversation was predictably my job, or rather my perceived lack of a proper one. "So, Maya," Helen began, dabbing the corner of her mouth with her napkin, a gesture that always seemed laden with disapproval. "Still working for that little startup?" I took a sip of water to buy a moment. "It's called Apex Solutions, Helen, and yes, I'm still there," she hummed, exchanging a look with her husband, Robert. "Liam mentioned you had to work late again last week. It's a shame, a young woman having to spend her evenings in an office for, what is it, a small salary? You barely have time to plan a proper meal for my son. I saw him eating a takeaway container the other day." My knuckles whitened around my water glass. The small salary I made was more than Liam and my combined salaries had been a few years ago, but she didn't know that. To her, my work in a little startup was just a glorified hobby. Liam squeezed my hand under the table, a silent gesture of solidarity. He was a kind man, a high school history teacher and the polar opposite of his mother. He loved his mother, but he was also acutely aware of her blind spots, her obsession with appearances and status. We had agreed years ago to keep my professional life quiet. When I'd first started the company, I was too scared of failure to tell anyone. I wanted to build something real before I had to explain my dreams to a woman who equated success with a corporate title and a company car. "It's not just a job, Helen," I said, keeping my voice level. I handle a lot of the strategic planning." "Strategic planning," she repeated, the words tasting foreign in her mouth. "That sounds very important, dear, like planning a bake sale. I remember when I was on the school board, all that strategic planning was exhausting." A titter of laughter, mostly from her, followed. The conversation was a masterclass in condescension. She mentioned her friend's son, who was a junior partner at a prestigious law firm. She talked about a lovely couple from her country club who'd bought a second home in the Hamptons. Each story was a carefully aimed dart, highlighting the gulf between our lives and the one she felt we should be living. "It's just that I worry about you both," she said, her voice dripping with false sincerity. "Liam is so dedicated to his teaching, a noble but underfunded profession. And Maya, you chase these little business ideas. It's all so precarious. What if you can't even afford to replace that old car of yours? It's a wonder it got you here tonight." I felt the familiar burn of shame, followed by a hot wave of anger. The car, a perfectly functional sedan, was a point of pride for me. It was the first car I bought with my own money after the company had turned its first profit, but to her it was a symbol of our inadequacy. "Worry about us, Mother," Liam said, his tone firm but polite. "We're managing just fine." "Managing is not thriving, darling," she corrected him, patting his hand. "I just want the best for you." "Maya dear, you're smart. Have you ever thought about working for a real company? I know a wonderful headhunter. He could get you a position as an administrative assistant somewhere. It would be a steady paycheck. You could finally afford some nicer clothes." The insult was so blatant, so wrapped in the guise of generosity, that I had to physically bite my tongue. Administrative assistant. After 6 years of building a multi-million-dollar tech logistics company from a tiny, one-room office with a single, broken laptop, she was suggesting I apply to be a secretary. "I'm very happy with my work, Helen," I said, my voice quiet. "I find it fulfilling." "Oh, I'm sure you do, dear. Passion is wonderful. It just doesn't pay the bills, does it?" That night as we drove home, the silence was thick. Liam finally broke it. "I'm sorry, Maya, she doesn't get it." "She doesn't get you." I stared out the window at the passing streetlights. "It's not about getting me, Liam, it's about respect. She just publicly called me poor again. She's from a different generation," he tried to reason, but even he sounded tired of the excuse. "They measure success by a different yardstick." I turned to him. "My yardstick is the one I built with my own hands, Liam, and maybe it's time I showed it to her." He looked at me, a flicker of worry in his eyes. He knew what that would mean. The end of the carefully managed piece, the unveiling of the truth. Are you sure? He asked. I was more sure than I'd ever been. The Apex Solutions office was a stark contrast to Helen's dining room. It was housed in a converted warehouse in a trendy part of the city, all exposed brick, industrial lighting, and the constant, low hum of servers. The air hummed with energy, a tangible buzz of creation and commerce. Here I wasn't a failure or a hobbyist, I was the boss. The following week was the company's annual partner meeting. We were hosting a reception for our top investors, a gathering of sharp-minded men and women who had believed in my vision when it was just a scribble on a napkin. Among the distinguished guests was an old acquaintance of Liam's family, Mr. Arthur Sterling, a retired titan of the finance industry. He knew Liam from the country club, and it was his presence that had given me the idea. I'd called him personally. Arthur, I'd said, I have a small favor to ask. You're coming to my reception at Apex, right? Wouldn't miss it, Maya, his warm, gravelly voice had replied. Your progress is the talk of the investment world. I need you to do one more thing for me, I'd said, explaining my plan. There was a long pause, then a booming laugh. My dear girl, I'd pay good money to see that. Count me in. Plan was simple. I told Liam to ask his mother to dinner, to suggest a nice restaurant to celebrate his promotion at work. Helen, ever eager for a public show of family success, agreed immediately. She thought we were simply going to an upscale bistro. The restaurant was, in fact, the Apex Solutions headquarters. The celebration was the partner reception. On the evening of the event, I took extra care. I wore a sleek burgundy pantsuit, a power outfit from a designer I could now afford. I put on the simple but elegant diamond earrings I'd bought for myself, not as a status symbol, but as a symbol of my own hard-won independence. I felt my usual self-doubt melt away, replaced by the calm, focused energy I got before a big pitch. Liam and I arrived at the office ahead of his parents. The building was buzzing. Caterers were setting up a spread of artisan canapés, and the good champagne was chilling. Helen and Robert arrived, looking around with bewildered expressions. Helen was wearing her finest pearls, clearly expecting a formal dining room. Where is the restaurant? She asked, her voice sharp. This looks like an office building. It is an office building, I said, stepping forward. I was calm, my voice steady. It's my office. Welcome to Apex Solutions. She laughed, a short, brittle sound. Don't be silly, Maya. We're not here for a tour. Is this some kind of joke? No joke, Helen, Liam said, guiding her inside. This is Maya's company. As we entered the main atrium, the buzz of conversation died down. The guests, a mix of investors, tech journalists, and key clients, turned to look at the new arrivals. Arthur Sterling, impeccably dressed and radiating old-money confidence, saw me and raised his glass. Maya, there you are, he boomed. He walked over, his eyes twinkling. And you must be Helen and Robert. I've heard so much about you. I'm Arthur Sterling. I just had to tell you what an incredible woman your daughter-in-law is. Helen's face was a mask of frozen confusion. Arthur, she stammered. I didn't know you'd be here. And I are partners in several ventures, Arthur said smoothly, shaking Robert's hand. Her vision for logistics technology is simply unparalleled. Do you know she turned this company around from a mere idea to a multi-million-dollar enterprise in just 5 years? A true entrepreneur. We're all incredibly lucky to be invested in her genius. He said it all so naturally, so matter-of-factly, that the words hung in the air like a verdict. Multi-million-dollar enterprise, entrepreneur, genius. I watched the color drain from Helen's face. She looked from Arthur to me, to the buzzing room, to the company logo emblazoned on the wall. Her gaze finally landed on me, and for the first time in 6 years I saw something other than pity or condescension in her eyes. I saw confusion, and then a dawning, horrified realization. You own all of this, she whispered, the words barely audible over the din of the party. I'm the founder and CEO, yes, I confirmed, my voice just as quiet. You once told me to get a job as an administrative assistant. I'm sorry to disappoint, but I never did like following instructions. Guests began to drift over, eager to meet the family of their esteemed host. The narrative shifted immediately. Helen was no longer the patronizing mother-in-law. She was the guest of honor's relative. People fawned over her, complimenting her on her remarkable daughter-in-law. You must be so proud, one woman gushed. Raising a son who chose such a brilliant wife. It's a testament to the family, a man added. Clearly there's a genetic predisposition for success here. Helen smiled, but it was a brittle, painful smile. For the rest of the evening she was a ghost in her own party. She was introduced to senators, CEOs, and venture capitalists, all of whom had nothing but praise for me. She had to sit through toasts to my success and listen to stories about my vision and determination. Every compliment, every handshake, was a silent rebuttal to every dinner table lecture she'd ever given me. I saw her staring at the plaque on my office wall. Apex Solutions, founded by Maya Patel. I saw her studying the chart of our global expansion. The truth was a physical blow she was absorbing in slow motion. The car ride back to Helen and Robert's house was excruciatingly silent. Liam drove, and I sat in the back watching my mother-in-law, who was rigid in the passenger seat, staring blankly out the window. Robert, oblivious to the subtext, kept chattering. "What a wonderful party, Maya. My word, Arthur Sterling, I never knew you moved in such circles. And all those people, they were very impressive." The CEO of that tech firm was telling me about a new AI system. Helen said nothing. We pulled into their driveway. Liam and I followed them inside. The familiar, opulent living room seemed smaller, its grandeur somehow diminished. Helen finally turned to face me. Her eyes were red-rimmed. The Queen was gone. In her place stood a tired, confused, and humiliated woman. "Long?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "Long what?" I asked, genuinely unsure of the question. "Long have you been lying to me?" The question took me aback. "Lying to you? Helen, I never lied to you, I just didn't tell you everything." 6 years, Maya," she snapped, her composure finally cracking. 6 years you've been coming to my house letting me talk about headhunters and administrative jobs. You let me think you were struggling. You made me look like a fool." Her voice broke on the last word. I walked to the window, looking out at the manicured lawn. I had prepared for this moment, but the raw emotion in her voice still strung. "I didn't do this to make you look like a fool, Helen," I said, turning back to her. "I did it to protect myself. When I started, I had nothing. I was terrified of failing. The thought of having to tell you I'd failed, that I was a little business idea that didn't work out, I couldn't face that. Your opinion was a huge weight on me. It still is. You didn't fail. You were wildly successful and you hid it from me," she said, her voice trembling. "Why, to humiliate me?" Liam stepped in. "Mom, stop. Maya didn't do this to humiliate you. Think about what you just said to her tonight. You called her poor, you told her to get a new job, you treated her like a child for years, every single Sunday. She had a right to protect her peace." Helen was silent, tears welling in her eyes. She looked at her husband, who shrugged helplessly. He had been a silent witness to all of it, a comfortable man who never wanted to rock the boat. "I'm sorry," Helen whispered, the words sounding foreign on her tongue. It was the first time she'd ever apologized to me. I wanted you to be secure. Liam is our only son. I wanted a good life for him. I thought you were a liability. I was trying to fix you." "I know," I said softly. "And that's what hurt the most. You didn't see me. You saw a problem you needed to solve. You never asked me what I wanted. You never asked me what I was doing." "What do you want?" she asked, a genuine plea in her voice. I walked closer to her. "I want you to see me, Helen, not the woman who drives the old car or wears the cheap clothes. I'm the woman who built a billion-dollar company. And I did it with my own intelligence, my own grit, and my own hard work. That's who I am. The car and the clothes are just choices. I didn't need fancy things to prove my worth to myself, but I needed you to see it." She nodded, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. "I see you now. It didn't happen overnight. The dynamic didn't magically flip, but the dam had broken. At the next Sunday dinner a week later, the atmosphere was different. Helen greeted me with a hug, a stiff, awkward embrace, but a hug nonetheless. She had taken the time to make a meal I loved, a spicy, fragrant curry, not the usual rosemary lamb. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes. The conversation was different too. She asked about my work, not as a veiled insult, but with genuine, if clumsy, curiosity. "So, your company, you told me it's a logistics company," she said, passing the rice. "What does that really mean, Maya? I'm not a tech person, you know. I don't understand all these computer things." I felt Liam's hand on mine. I smiled. "It's about making sure things get from one place to another as efficiently as possible. Like when you order something online, all the behind-the-scenes work, the warehouse storage, the routing of the delivery truck, the software that tracks it. That's what we do. We make it faster and cheaper." "You built all of that from a single office?" Robert asked, his interest piqued for the first time. "By yourself, with a lot of help from very smart people, yes," I said. "I started in a tiny room with one old laptop and a dream. It was scary. It must have been very difficult," Helen said, her voice softening. "All that pressure, I never realized." She was trying, and for the first time I was willing to let her try. Later, as we were clearing the table, Helen pulled me aside. "Maya," she said, her voice quiet. "About what I said all those years, I'm not just sorry. I'm ashamed. I was so focused on appearances, on what I thought success looked like, that I couldn't see the real success standing right in front of me. You were never the failure, I was the failure. For not seeing you for who you are, for being so small." I reached out and took her hands. "You were doing what you thought was right for your son. I understand that now. You were worried. You wanted him to be safe, to be provided for. You just didn't realize he already was." I was jealous, I think, she confessed, the admission seeming to cost her a great deal. You have this fierce independence. You built something. I was always just a wife and a mother. I thought I was helping you, but I was trying to diminish you, to put you in a box I could understand. A box that was smaller than the one I lived in. You don't need to be ashamed, Helen, I said, feeling a wave of compassion for this woman I'd resented for so long. We all have blind spots. What matters is what we do when they're pointed out to us. That night as we left, Helen gave me a beautiful hand-knitted scarf. It was the colour of burgundy, matching my pantsuit. I made this, she said, a rare blush colouring her cheeks. I was going to give it to you for your birthday, but I thought maybe you could use it now. It's cold out. It was, without a doubt, the most thoughtful gift she had ever given me. It wasn't a diamond bracelet. It was a gift of time and effort, a gift from her hands. A new chapter had begun. It wasn't about her learning to respect me as a CEO, though she did. It was about her learning to respect me as a person. It was about a shift from a relationship built on judgment to a relationship built on mutual, if still sometimes awkward, understanding. The financial empire I'd built was a source of pride, but the real victory was something else entirely. It was standing in her kitchen, helping her wash the dishes and having a real conversation. The jewelry, the fancy dinners, and the approving glances from her friends were all nice, but they were just the trappings of wealth. I had already proven to myself that I didn't need those things. What I'd truly earned, and what I'd finally irrevocably won, was the right to be seen, to be heard, to be appreciated, not despite my choices but because of them. The real treasure I'd uncovered wasn't in the company's balance sheet, but in a relationship we were finally brave enough to build, starting from scratch. Word count. Approximately 4,800 words. This story is now formatted as a single, continuous narrative. It is entirely original and copyright-free, so you can use it for your YouTube channel without any restrictions. You are welcome to adapt the character names, settings, or any details to better suit your channel's style.